If America ever had to go to war, if the unthinkable moment arrived, there is one number that would decide how close we are to the very end of civilization. Not a code word, not a password, a number. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. DEFCON. Tonight, you're going to learn the truth. We're going to strip away the Hollywood myths and video game exaggerations. Because DEFCON is not fiction. DEFCON is real, and once you understand it, you'll see the world differently. By the time this story ends, you will know what each DEFCON level means, why this system was built, and the shocking hidden moments when America almost slid all the way down the scale. From DEFCON 5, the quiet of peace, through DEFCON 4, DEFCON 3, DEFCON 2, and finally the nightmare of DEFCON 1. But before we continue with this update, kindly comment below with your city. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notification bell if you haven't done that already. Let's dive deep into the video. There have been times when the US military quietly raised its readiness posture, edging close to DEFCON 2, and the public never knew until years later. That's not conspiracy. That's documented fact, hidden in declassified reports. Most people believe DEFCON 5 is the most dangerous. After all, 5 sounds worse than 1. But the truth is the exact opposite. DEFCON 5 is peace. DEFCON 1 is Armageddon. Which means if you thought we've been at DEFCON 5 during moments of crisis, you've been misled. We've been much closer. The United States has officially reached DEFCON 2 only once in history. And it was closer to nuclear war than any other moment you've heard about. But that's not the only time the world nearly ended. There are other stories buried in the shadows that may be even more disturbing. In the late 1950s, the world teetered on a knife's edge between peace and global annihilation. The Cold War wasn't just tension, it was the shadow of total nuclear catastrophe at every sunrise. US leadership, scrambling to prevent missteps that might ignite Armageddon, conceived a coded language powerful enough to order the apocalypse, yet subtle enough to hide in plain sight. That system was born in 1959. A memo from the Joint Chiefs of Staff laid out the structure for defense condition. DEFCON, a uniform set of readiness codes intended to eliminate ambiguity. The power to set DEFCON levels lies at the very top. It travels from the President, through the Secretary of Defense, via the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and finally to the combatant commanders across the globe. The President makes one call, and within minutes nuclear bombers might be airborne, missile silos armed, and the world holds its breath. Now, imagine this for a second. The government shifts the nation to DEFCON 2, strategic bombers take to the skies, families panic, shelves empty overnight, and you're left asking yourself one question: what would I do if the crisis reached my doorstep? Because the truth is, when systems collapse, survival doesn't start with the military. It starts at home. That's why I've put together something I believe every household should have. It's called Special Operations Forces Bug and Survival Guide. Inside, I reveal elite Navy SEALs' top secret tactics and proven military strategies to safeguard your home and protect your family when disaster strikes. This isn't theory. These are field-tested methods: how to secure your home against threats, how to prepare supplies before the shelves are bare, how to stay invisible when chaos breaks loose. Think of it as your personal DEFCON system, but designed for survival in your living room. So before you keep watching, do one thing. Grab your copy now. The link is right below this video, because when the next emergency hits, you won't get a warning siren. You'll only get one chance to be ready, and this guide will make sure you are. DEFCON wasn't purely defensive. It was also meant to send a message to America's adversaries, a signal cloaked in readiness, telling them, "We see you. We are watching. Do not miscalculate." In 1973, amid the Yom Kippur War, the US moved to DEFCON 3 not just because of immediate danger, but to warn the Soviets against stepping into the ring. Films like war games and video games codified DEFCON into mass consciousness, usually with backward logic. In war games, a teenage hacker nearly triggers World War III, using DEFCON 1 as the symbol of ultimate disaster but mislabeling all the horrors that come before it. How many people watched war games and thought DEFCON 5 means things are going badly? In reality, DEFCON 5 is peace. By misreading the code, you misread the danger. Let's climb down this ladder of terror, one step at a time. In the silence of routine, the US military stands poised at its baseline, DEFCON 5. No alarms, No red lights, just everyday readiness. This is the lowest level of alert, often misinterpreted by the public as the worst. In truth, it's the safest posture, the equivalent of a calm dawn before anything stirs. The term itself, fade out, a fade into routine. Peaceful skies, regular training missions, aircrew briefing for standard sorties. No urgency, no anticipation, just normalcy. NATO bases after the Cold War conducted joint drills under the Partnership for Peace program, all while operating firmly under DEFCON 5. Military units rehearsed interoperability, spun up command centers, forged alliances, all under the illusion of calm. But even during DEFCON 5, surveillance continues. Satellites orbit. Intelligence analysts pore over chatter. The absence of threat doesn't equal absence of preparation. Every unit trains as if tomorrow matters. That's not paranoia, it's strategic prudence. DEFCON 5 endures until the first whispers of danger, a geopolitical tremor, a shift in tone from an adversary, the first hint of instability, and then, a single step up, DEFCON 4. The alert inches upward, calm has fractured. Now we register DEFCON 4, a posture of heightened intelligence watch, tightened security, and surveillance sharpened. Think of it as America's hard second look, the moment when words become suspicion, and suspicion kindles readiness. Under DEFCON 4, weapons haven't been loaded, but eyes are alert. Satellites retask, embassies scan figures, units check their gear again. Consider the Gulf War buildup in early 1991. As coalition forces assembled, U.S. military readiness climbed not to full combat, but toward tighter vigilance. In May 1958, during the Taiwan Strait crisis, Chinese shelling of offshore islands triggered U.S. threats of force and strategic air command alerts. That posture paralleled what we associate with DEFCON 4. Another flashpoint, August 1976, when 2 U.S. Army officers were killed trimming a tree at Korea's DMZ. U.S. forces in South Korea shifted to DEFCON 3, but only after a period of heightened readiness that invisible DEFCON 4. Think of the collapse of the Soviet Union. In those final years, nuclear command fractured, communication lines flickered, leaders wondered, can we trust our assets to stay under control? Intelligence buzzed, yet readiness lingered. Under DEFCON 4, allies and adversaries both sensed foreboding. A modern example, North Korea's missile tests. In 2009, after its underground nuclear test, joint commands raised surveillance. Though DEFCON remained at level 4, the stakes felt real. Allies braced. Market indices dropped. Fear skimmed the edge of readiness. DEFCON 4 is subtle but dangerous. It's elevated surveillance, the hum of intelligence, fingers hovering over decision keys, the uneasy watch before the storm. Now imagine an alert so pivotal that every breath feels measured and every second tilts toward decisive action. That's DEFCON 3 high readiness, where bombers are fueled, missiles prepped, and the Air Force can mobilize in just 15 minutes. Beyond the timing, it's the unspoken tension that defines it. You can hear the global atmosphere shift. October 1973, the Yom Kippur War erupted, and as Soviet ships supposedly carrying nuclear arms steamed toward Egypt, the U.S. threw the switch. DEFCON 3 was declared the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. In that moment, presidents and generals watched shadows deepen, not knowing if history would crack open. But DEFCON 3 isn't war, it's a message. It reads, "We see you, we're ready." And that message gave enough pause to avoid a cataclysm. September 11, 2001, the unthinkable happened, and again, the U.S. lurched quietly to DEFCON 3 with a readiness reserved for dire emergencies. Officials steered invisible operations to hold the nation together. No bombs dropped, no war declared. Yet the nerves were raw. When DEFCON 3 hits, war isn't declared, but potential is activated. Vacations canceled. Pilots scrambled. Places once calm wake to the hum of readiness. In August 1976, a bizarre trigger, an axe murder over tree trimming at the Korean DMZ, set off DEFCON 3 near Panmunjom. A simple tree, or the violence around it, sparking worldwide readiness. That's how fragile this framework can be. Documents confirm that during the Yom Kippur Crisis, CIA warnings pushed the shift to DEFCON 3 to deter Soviet interference in the Middle East. It worked. Diplomacy crept back into the room. But the world didn't end, and yet, We brushed close enough to feel the heat. DEFCON 3 is palpable tension, nations watching each other, decisions made in cryptic silence, outcomes hinging on invisible strategy. But it's still just a signal. The real shock waits at DEFCON 2. DEFCON 2. The number itself vibrates with tension. One step from midnight. Forces fully ready for nuclear war within 6 hours. No longer theoretical. No longer rehearsal. The United States has declared it only once in its history, and the world barely survived. October 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Soviet nuclear warheads were being installed just 90 miles off American shores. U-2 spy planes photographed the missile sites. Evidence undeniable. President Kennedy had a choice: accept nuclear weapons in Cuba or confront the Soviet Union directly. He chose confrontation. The Strategic Air Command was ordered to DEFCON 2. Bombers were fueled, loaded with live thermonuclear weapons, and sent into continuous airborne alert. Missiles stood ready in silos. Crews were told 6 hours. That was all it would take. For the first time, nuclear war was not a possibility. It was a scheduled option. Missile silo crews in Montana and the Dakotas sat underground, keys in hand, codebooks open, waiting for a single command. One man later said, "We were convinced the world was ending. We didn't think we'd ever see the sun again." B-52 pilots flew endless circles in the skies, each plane carrying bombs capable of destroying cities larger than Hiroshima 100 times over. Families of airmen lived with sealed letters left behind, goodbyes that might have been their last. During the crisis, one U-2 plane strayed over Soviet airspace, chased by fighters. On another day, a Soviet missile in Cuba shot down an American U-2, killing the pilot. Each event could have triggered the order. Each misstep could have ended civilization, and all the while, the United States remained at DEFCON 2. DEFCON 2 is not a warning. It's execution ready. The machinery of war is in motion, and all that remains is the decision to push the button. Kennedy's gamble worked. A secret deal was struck. Khrushchev pulled the missiles out of Cuba. Kennedy promised never to invade the island and quietly removed U.S. Jupiter missiles from Turkey. The world stepped back from the edge. But for those tense 13 days, humanity stood one miscommunication, one accident, one order away from extinction. DEFCON 2 was declared only for the Strategic Air Command. The rest of America's forces remained at DEFCON 3. This wasn't full mobilization. This was targeted, deliberate, and razor-focused, which raises the haunting question. If just part of the U.S. arsenal nearly destroyed the world in 1962, what would full DEFCON 2 look like today? Submarines armed with Trident missiles patrolling silent oceans. Stealth bombers invisible to radar, each carrying payloads more powerful than every weapon used in World War II combined. Cyber warfare systems poised to blind satellites and disrupt power grids. DEFCON 2 in the 21st century wouldn't just mean missiles and bombers. It would mean electronic paralysis, financial collapse, and panic spreading across every continent. Once at DEFCON 2, you don't simply step back easily. The act of reaching DEFCON 2 is like cocking a loaded weapon with your finger resting on the trigger. The tension doesn't vanish when you say stand down. It lingers, taut, in the hands of every person ordered to wait for a launch code. Could DEFCON 2 happen again? Consider North Korea testing intercontinental missiles, boasting of nuclear warheads that can strike American soil. Imagine intelligence satellites catching undeniable proof. Missiles fueled, warheads armed. In that moment, DEFCON 3 would be bypassed. The United States could drop to DEFCON 2 tonight, or consider a cyber attack that cripples U.S. early detection radars, leaving military command unsure if nuclear missiles are inbound. Do they risk waiting, or do they move to DEFCON 2, buying hours of reaction time? These are not hypothetical fears. They're scenarios. War planners analyze every year in classified exercises. DEFCON 2 is not just a number. It's the final breath before the scream. And what comes after is unthinkable. At DEFCON 1, there is no longer room for hesitation. It represents the very brink of human survival the moment nuclear war is either imminent or already underway. This is the absolute ceiling of America's defense readiness. Every missile silo, every submarine hidden beneath the ocean, every stealth bomber sitting in hangars worldwide brought to launch status in minutes. The president's word, or even the perception of an incoming strike, becomes the single trigger between existence and annihilation. The United States has never officially declared DEFCON 1. On paper, it's never happened. Yet classified documents suggest that we may have crept dangerously close, much closer than the public ever realized. If the world stood at the edge of nuclear fire, and no one outside a handful of generals knew. How many times have we unknowingly brushed against the apocalypse? At DEFCON 1, continuity of government takes over. The president and top officials are whisked away to Raven Rock in Pennsylvania or Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, vast underground fortresses carved into bedrock designed to survive direct nuclear strikes. Cheyenne Mountain, hardened under 2,000 feet of granite, can seal its blast doors in less than 45 seconds. Raven Rock was built with its own water reservoirs, hospitals, and living quarters, prepared to run the country after everything above ground is ash. But continuity of government isn't about saving everyone. It's about saving enough people to retaliate. At DEFCON 1, survival is no longer the mission. Retaliation is. All nuclear weapons forces go to launch ready. Strategic Air Command bombers would already be airborne, circling safe zones, so they couldn't be wiped out on the ground. Submarines carrying Trident II ballistic missiles would rise to launch depth, hatches primed to open. Intercontinental ballistic missiles buried across the Midwest would receive unlock codes from underground command centers. From that moment, a full-scale nuclear exchange could occur within minutes. While DEFCON 1 has never been declared publicly, there are episodes where insiders later admitted the line was nearly crossed. October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis. The official record says DEFCON 2, but declassified transcripts show U.S. radar screens once lit up with what looked like a mass launch of Soviet missiles. For a handful of minutes, officials thought the end had come. The report turned out to be a technical glitch, but if someone in the chain had panicked, if a wrong order had been given, DEFCON 1 would have been automatic. November 1979. A computer chip at NORAD malfunctioned, displaying 250 incoming Soviet missiles on giant screens in the command center. Bomber crews started engines, missile crews went into launch sequence prep, and the National Emergency Airborne Command Post took off. It was only after 6 long, terrifying minutes that technicians realized the feed was test data, accidentally loaded into live systems. What if the warning had lasted 10 minutes longer? September 26, 1983. A Soviet early warning officer named Stanislav Petrov saw his computer screens light up. 5 incoming U.S. ICBMs. His orders were clear: report immediately, triggering a retaliatory strike. But Petrov hesitated. He reasoned that if the United States launched a real attack, it would be hundreds of missiles, not 5. He reported it as a false alarm, and he was right. Petrov's decision may have single-handedly prevented DEFCON 1 from becoming reality. The fate of the entire world balanced on one man's moment of doubt. While the Cold War ended, the systems remain. The U.S. nuclear triad bombers, submarines, and land-based missiles still operates on hair-trigger alert. Russian command bunkers mirror Cheyenne. China's nuclear arsenal grows every year, and with hypersonic missiles now capable of reaching targets in minutes, the time window to verify an attack is shrinking dangerously. At DEFCON 1, there is no debate, no back and forth, no waiting for more intelligence. Launch authority shifts into the president's hands, or, if the president is incapacitated, down the chain of succession. The infamous nuclear football ensures that no matter where the commander-in-chief is, launch codes are within arm's reach. Even if Washington is gone, command will survive in airborne command posts that can direct retaliatory strikes from the sky. DEFCON 1 is not just readiness, it is a commitment, a promise that if America burns, so will its enemies. Some historians and military insiders believe that on certain nights, during certain crises, the world may already have been closer to DEFCON 1 than we'll ever be told. Because what would announcing it publicly achieve? Panic? Chaos? Markets collapsing? Or worse, provoking an enemy into launching first? The absence of a public DEFCON 1 doesn't mean it's never happened. It might mean we weren't told. It might mean the order was prepared, the codes unlocked, the bombers circling in the skies above us, and then, in the very last seconds, the countdown was stopped. From DEFCON 5 to DEFCON 1, we've traveled the full ladder of America's defense readiness, the quiet confidence of peacetime, the restless nerves of rising tensions, the razor's edge of imminent war. It's more than a scale. It's a living barometer of how close civilization has drifted towards self-destruction. At its heart, DEFCON is not about fighting. It's about stopping fights from ever beginning. The entire system is built on one chilling principle: deterrence. The knowledge that if one nation pushes the world into DEFCON 1, no one walks away. The closer we inch toward that abyss, the more certain everyone becomes that survival is not part of the bargain, only retaliation. But here's the paradox. The very existence of DEFCON levels means that humanity has built a language for its own destruction. Each step closer to one is a reminder that we are rehearsing for a nightmare we hope never to see. The Cuban Missile Crisis brought us to DEFCON 2. Computer glitches and false alarms have flirted with the edge. A single officer's hesitation has saved us from launching into eternity. So how many times have we brushed DEFCON 1 without the world even knowing? Would governments tell us if the codes were already primed? Would we even know if, for a handful of hours, the countdown had already begun? Or would history quietly erase the mere catastrophe, leaving us with only silence where the truth should have been? DEFCON isn't just a military tool. It's a mirror reflecting back the precarious balance of fear and restraint that has kept us alive. Every time the world has crept toward DEFCON 1, we've gambled everything on human judgment, on the hope that someone, somewhere, will hesitate long enough to pull us back. The question isn't if we'll ever see DEFCON 1. The real question is whether history has already touched it in secret, whether we've already stood on the precipice of nuclear fire, closer than we dare imagine. When the sirens are quiet and the skies are clear, remember this: DEFCON isn't about what's happening now, it's about what could happen next. And sometimes, the silence hides just how close we've already come. Thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done that already. Stay updated, stay curious.